All new at 5 major organized crime busts, 23 people under arrest now accused of stealing guns and cash.
Today, police revealed 4 organized crime groups are wreaking havoc.
From aggravated robbery to kidnapping, burglary, and more. Let's take a look at this. New pictures from court documents in this case. These are a few of the people who have been charged, and investigators say the money, tens of thousands of dollars, is all stolen.
FBI, open up!
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today, got Lou Ferrante. But first, I wanted to jump on here and let you guys know that I got exclusive content on Patreon. Make sure you join the Patreon. People have been starting to go over there and check it out. I'm going to keep uploading exclusive content you won't see anywhere else. And I'll put the things on Patreon that I can't put on YouTube. You know, YouTube has a lot of crazy policies and all this. And if you want to see the exclusive content, you have to join Patreon. This is a really good interview I did with Lou Ferrante. Go check out his book, Rise of Power, I believe the name is. There's a link in the description of this video. And without any further ado,
here chatting with Staxx on the Staxx Show.
welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Lou Ferrante.
My goal is to make, I don't have to make you, I don't have to get your mind into the mobology. You're in it already. You understand it. But the average casual reader who picks up the book, I want them to understand it too. You know, somebody who reads other things too, but just picks up a mob book once in a blue moon. They don't understand the stories. They don't know. They don't have sort of that bell that goes off like you would have or I would have when we hear something that's not true. We know this life, so the bell goes off. You're involved with it every day. I was involved with it every day. They don't. Your average reader goes to Barnes and Noble, picks up the book. Maybe he's a bus driver. Maybe he reads 2 mob books a year. So I'm trying to get him to think like a mobster too. So by the time he puts down the trilogy, he's going to go, wow, I'll spot something in a minute now if it's not true. Yeah. Or I'll see a documentary. Last night I was watching, I got off my last bus route and I'm watching a documentary before I fell asleep on History Channel. Bang. I read the book. Lou taught me how to think and I spotted that shit right away. So that's sort of what I want to do. I want to bring the reader along with me, teach the reader how to think like a mobster so that when that reader puts down that book and puts down eventually the trilogy, Borgata, Rise of Empire, they're going to understand I know everything within the Borgata, how it works, how people think, because I break down how people think. Years ago, I read Thucydides. Thucydides used to write and tell you how people think, what they were thinking before they made a decision in the ancient Greek world. Those are the people I like to read. A lot of the Greek thinkers like that. Herodotus did it a little. I forget who did the March of the 10,000. Thucydides was the Peloponnesian War, but somebody else did the March of the 10,000. So you think they teach you how these people think. Plutarch did it in Plutarch's Lives. He did the Greco-Roman Lives, and he teaches you how Alexander might have did this or why he did that. Caesar, why he did this. So I do the same thing with mob guys and mob bosses. And I'll also tell you why Castellano got clipped and how he could have avoided it. Maybe how Joseph Massino took over the family and never got clipped. And how he did it until he became a rat. Joe Massino was, sharp as nails. You got to give credit for that. He was a Machiavelli, like Machiavelli. He deserved the Machiavelli Award handed to him by Machiavelli. I mean, that's like how good he was until he became a rat, and then kind of like let everybody down, and just now goes down in history as just like the worst mob snitch. But before that, he knew how to do things. So I point out how people do things right, how people do things wrong, and explain to you why somebody died in bed at 90 years old and how somebody else was clipped in the street at 55. So kind of.
What do you think about people trying to say now that Joe Watts was bad?
Joe Watts was a man's man. I knew Joe Watts. I was friends with Joe Watts. I was away with Joe Watts. Joe Watts never ratted on anybody. I don't know where the stories come from. I can't figure it out, to be honest with you. But Joe Watts never ratted on anybody. First of all, Joe Watts was one of the smartest mobsters you will ever meet in your life. Sharp as nails. I'm talking about like the Meyer Lansky of today's mob. Knew how to earned millions for the mob, was a legitimate tough guy. You know, they've accused him of a million different things. I don't have to tell what he's been accused of. Everybody knows how tough Joe Watts is. Joe Watts was extremely intelligent. He knew how to fight a case, and he knew how to rat if he wanted to. If Joe Watts wanted to be a rat, he would have figured out how to be a rat. He would have known how to be a rat. So we're supposed to believe, as smart as Joe was, he was so bumbling that he couldn't figure out how to rat. I mean, come on.
Joe Watts spent all that time in prison, right?
Exactly. And the rats, how many rats you know that get sent away for 30 years? He just got out. He was away all these years. I was away with Joe in 1995 or 6. So all these years later, he just gets out now. I mean, come on, man. You know, this is like, and first of all, I think Sammy put a lot of that shit out. Yeah. And if you listen to Sammy's stories, he tells a lie. He says that they came to talk to him in a Supermax, the feds did, and they flew all the way there, 3,500 miles or whatever. And then he goes, they listen to the video. They came and they spoke to him. And I don't listen to a lot of the videos, but this was sent to me by a friend of mine who knew Joe, was close with Joe too. And he says, Luke, can you do me a favor? I know you were close with Joe. Listen to this video. I said, sure. He says the feds flew there. And then he goes, they came to my cell. Nobody comes to your cell. They bring you down. Then he says, and they said to me, you know why we're here? No, I don't know why you're here. Well, we can't tell you why we're here. Well, why can't you tell me why you're here? Well, we came because it's bullshit. He makes it up as he goes. And then they told him something about Joe being a rat. Joe was no rat. It's all a lie. Joe was no rat. Joe could have been a rat if he wanted to be. He would have testified and put everybody away. Or he would have never did a day. Even if he was a dry snitch, they would have let him out. But Joe goes 30 years and we're supposed to believe this. I don't know where it came from. I don't believe it. I know people that would have did life if Joe was a rat. So, you know, and let me tell you, I was close with Joe. Joe sends up Charlie Carnesi to see me one day in jail. I'm in jail. This is how much of a friend Joe was and how much of a generous, good guy he was.
Yeah, he was giving a lot of money out, right? He was paying a lot. Wasn't he paying guards off and all this stuff?
Well, a rat would never do this. Let me just tell you my story, and a rat would never do this. Charlie Carnesi comes up to see me. So I tell Charlie about my case. So he's going to come on my case. And I had paid, I told you, I went through 7 attorneys. So I said, Charlie, I'm going to bring you on. I was happy with everything Charlie said. I says, look, I'm going to have him meet one of my friends on the street. He'll straighten out with the retainer. He goes, it's taken care of already. I says, what? Who took care of it? He says, Joe Watts took care of it. I said, you got to be kidding me. You're retained already? He goes, oh, yeah, you didn't know that? So I said, no, I had no idea. So Joe hired Charlie Carnesi to defend me because Joe felt like I was a kid. I was a young kid. I was a good kid. I was a stand-up kid. And nobody was, you know, at that point, sending me money or lawyers. So Joe did it. So that's what a man Joe was. Now, would a rat do that? How many lawyers did Sammy send to represent people? How many shekels did Sammy dish out to defend people? Think about that. Joe would never have done that. Rats don't like stand-up kids and then like them so much that they're going to pay for a lawyer for them. If Joe was a rat, he would have said, you're a stand-up kid too. I spit on you. You're stupid. You should do what I'm doing. Joe was a stand-up guy. So I don't know where that all comes from, but Joe's a man's man. You know, I was one to tell you how close I was with Joe too. When Joe beat the case, Joe got pulled over to the state and he beat the case for the guy who took a couple of pop shots at John. There was a guy, Jeffrey Saccone, I think his name was Chacon or Saccone, took a couple of pop shots at John on 101st Avenue. So Joe was tried for that murder. Joe was acquitted for that murder. He was acquitted in the state. I think Fat Sal Majota or another fat something was his snitch against him. So Joe gets acquitted. Joe called my house. My father, rest in peace. When I called my house from the feds, he says, Joe, I just hung up with Joe from the state. Joe said he got acquitted. He just left the courtroom. So I was the first number that Joe called to tell that he got acquitted. And then I announced it to everybody in the feds. Said, hey, good news, guys. Joe just got acquitted in the state of that murder. So if Joe was a rat, why then was he pulled over from the feds to go through trial in the state for a murder, which he faced life for? Why wouldn't he just say, hey, guys, call the state up and let them know I'm ratting so that they dismiss the charges on some ridiculous bullshit and I could get out of here? Oh, okay, Joe. But that didn't happen. Joe had to go to trial for that murder.
Yeah.
And Joe got acquitted because he paid the best lawyers money could buy, and he had a good defense. And I don't even know what happened, but maybe he didn't do it, whatever the case was. But Joe got acquitted on that. He went through hell, Joe.
Do you think Mikey Scars and Junior Gotti felt some type of way about Joe Watts?
Say that again.
Do you think Mikey Scars and Junior Gotti felt some type of way about about Watts's relationship with Gotti Sr.?
Did they feel how about it? I don't know.
Like,
I don't
do you think that they like were angry that he was making
money? I mean, I can't speak for Mikey Scars or John Jr. I have no idea. I can't speak for them, but I know that a lot of people in the life were jealous of Joe. I'm going to tell you that right now. A lot of people in the life were jealous of Joe because Joe was the right-hand man of John Gotti. Joe, to give you an idea how Joe was trusted and how he definitely wasn't a rat. Joe was close with Carlo Gambino. Carlo dies. Joe was close with Paul Castellano. Castellano gets clipped. Joe's supposedly on it. Okay, whatever the case was, if that's true, who knows, right? Let's assume he was, whatever the case was. Then Joe becomes best friends with John Gotti. Joe's always at the top. If Joe wanted to be a rat, he could have took down the whole Gambino crime family from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
He would have been the greatest rat ever. So we're supposed to
bigger
believe
than Sammy, right?
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of jealousy with Sammy because Joe was closer with Frankie DeCicco than Sammy ever was. Sammy pretended he was close to Frankie DeCicco. Maybe he was a little, maybe he wasn't. Frankie wasn't Sammy's skipper. Toto was. So there was a relationship with Sammy and Frankie, but Frankie's best friend was Joe Watts. Joe Watts was close with Frankie. And the only reason Joe Watts then didn't get raised is because he wasn't straightened out. He was half Welsh. They call him Joe the German, but he was a Welshman. He was half Welsh, half Italian. So yeah. Joe would have been then the underboss. Joe would have been everything Sammy was. And Joe was the guy with the big balls. Sammy wasn't. Sammy had no balls. Why do you think Sammy was sitting in the baby seat? Sammy was in the car with John during the hit on Paul.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that they drove by the body?
Let's assume it was true, right? Let's assume Sammy was in the car with John, right? Let's just assume for a second that he really was. Let's pretend it's true. If Sammy was in the car with John, you tell me if Sammy was such a tough guy, why he wasn't on the street with the rest of the crew.
What's good, everybody? I figured I'd jump on here live and chop it up with you guys. See what's going on out there. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me, John. I appreciate you watching my content. Mike, what's going on? Roger, Mike O'Malley, how are you? So I want to talk about this one case that's going. There's a lot of things going on. So they're digging for bodies again in the Gambino graveyard up at their horse farm. But that's not what I want to talk about today. Today, I want to talk about this. This woman was arrested. Her toddler was found with 3 kilos of cocaine in his backpack. Insane. 3 years old. Her name's Tierra Takora Hill. In a backpack on a 3-year-old that was wearing a backpack allegedly contained more than 2 pounds of cocaine. It was 3 kilos. So the 35-year-old woman in Alabama is accused of using a 3-year-old child to help her traffic hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of illegal narcotics after authorities allegedly found the little boy carrying around 4.5 pounds of cocaine in a little Nike backpack. You can't make this shit up. Tierra Takora Hill was taken into custody over the weekend and charged with 1 count each of trafficking cocaine, second-degree marijuana possession, tampering with physical evidence, as well as 4 other counts of chemical endangerment of a child, authorities announced. According to a news release from the Mobile County Sheriff's Office, a reliable confidential source informed investigators that a woman named Tiara had been keeping a large amount of narcotics at a known location. This led to the sheriff's narcotics team to set up surveillance squad outside of Hill's home at the 1900 block of Harvey Court in Mobile, Alabama. The surveillance unit watched as Hill left her home and tracked her vehicle before conducting a traffic stop a short time later. During the search of the vehicle, detectives recovered about 1.5 kilos, over 3.3 pounds of cocaine in the car. A small amount of marijuana and a handgun was also recovered in the vehicle during the stop. Investigators obtained and executed a search warrant at Hill Harvey's Court home, where investigators say 4 children aged 3, 8, and 10, and 15 were found inside unattended. This is when authorities say they came across a toddler wearing a blue Nike backpack. Inside the bag, detectives allegedly found 2 kilos of cocaine, roughly 4.4 pounds. A second backpack that was not being worn by any of the children allegedly contained 1 kilo of cocaine, as well as 2 handguns. Mobile Sheriff's Department Paul Birch upbraided Hill for leaving 4 juveniles unattended in the home with a deadly weapon and narcotics, all in which were accessible to all the minor children at the time. It is absurd how reckless the situation was. He said in a statement, there's total disregard for the law and the children's well-being. The sheriff's office said that narcotics had a street value of about $450,000. They probably had no food in the fridge either. So they added additional thoughts in an interview. I think she made a deliberate decision to ride around with a substantial amount of drugs and a firearm in the car and leave the children at home unattended, even with more cocaine and drugs. So that's a deliberate action. It's not a poor decision, he told the station. He also spoke to the fact that the toddler allegedly was found lugging around more than $100,000 worth of cocaine. It is safe to say the 3-year-old probably didn't know that the drugs were in the backpack. Each kilo is 2.2 pounds. They're roughly common, referred to as a brick. So you got 2 bricks in a backpack being worried by a 3-year-old child. And then you got a loaded handgun in the bags where the kids are. Insane. You can't make this shit up. But I hope you guys have a great night. There's a lot more content on the way. Make sure you check out the Patreon. Don't forget, go check out the Patreon. I believe you can watch it for free as well. But I'm going to be dropping exclusive content you can't see anywhere else, because YouTube's shitty. But anyway, have a great night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. And if you don't like this content, do fucking bad. Start your own podcast. And remember, don't be a bitch.